So today, I think having not had a opportunity to catch up for a while on current affairs, political, social, economic developments, etc., I think it would be good for us to take a step back from the thematic issues and reflect a bit on the trajectory of things in Nigeria at the moment. Yeah, following the Edo election, in light of the ongoing shenanigans in respect to the oil price, and a few other current affairs topics, and bad governance and the fallout, and the preparation for October 1st. And also, some other social developments that have been happening on the side of this. So, it's a more relaxed episode since all the other ones we do are very formal.
Netflix, it's a Netflix and chill things.
Exactly. So,
Politics and chill.
yep, barroom talk. Somebody once called us. Yeah, so maybe that's the most appropriate framework. But yeah, I guess to immediately throw it to our amiable co-hosts on the show. I mean, what have you guys been tracking? What's on the radar for you? Yeah, were you shocked by the Edo election?
Hell no.
Or or did it? Were there elements of it that stood out to you, or is it the normal brigandage?
I think the election thing is just, it's the normal stuff because the IREF didn't work properly again, or I don't even think they used it. If they said they used it, I don't think
It did work properly.
it worked properly. That's
I guess it depends what you mean by properly.
Okay, well,
a lot of things work. Like some people say that the Warrior family is not working, but some other people say actually
yes,
it works.
Exactly.
So,
Yeah, I understand. So yeah, the IREF did what it was supposed to do. That but in terms of maybe reflecting,
Megan has a different take. It sounds like.
Were you on ground for the election, or were you?
I was following it now.
You're following on ground. So what was the temperament on ground? Not on ground, okay.
On ground is that I went to Edo. Hell no.
Oh, okay. I thought you were on ground. Yeah, but now, how did it pan out? Because
he was on air. on cloud.
The general sentiment that I got for it was that, it's the same APC, shenanigans, and then using whatever it is that they have in terms of muscle, to make sure that they come out on top of it, So, and a lot of people have been voicing their displeasure about the election and what the outcome was, So, yeah, that's largely what I've gotten from me. There's been threats and at least threats of violence. I didn't keep up enough to see if it was really executed or that people were hurt and injured, but there was huge threats of violence, people showing muscle, all that, So I don't think it might have been an electoral act or electoral exercise that allowed for full participation of people without fear of intimidation. Yeah.
Yeah, Megan, what's your take?
I mean, it's slightly different from OAG's one. I mean, but I think that things work, going by, what different civil society organizations, their reports. So yeah, the accreditation thing worked largely, to significant bit. And these parts of the elections haven't really always been issues. That worked. IREF worked. I mean, unlike, the presidential election bit, where there was a bit of snag.
So when you say IREF worked, it means that you're saying results were uploaded in real time.
Oh yeah, they were. Yeah, pretty. Yeah. I mean, you had over 80% in about 24 hours or even less. It did work.
Interesting.
It means at the polling unit, like they were taking snapshots of the the tally of results, and then they were uploading. I guess for people who are not following this stuff as closely, that's one of the new innovations in electoral management in Nigeria, that there's a website you can go to where during the elections you can track like each of the individual polling stations as they're publishing their results.
Yeah, at what level, local government level, and all of that.
Yeah.
All of that did work. I mean, where you probably had, I mean, before you got that, where, you had some hiccups was, the issue of logistics, moving. And again, well, I don't want to say insignificant because then you're looking at statistics, but
Right.
but the interesting thing about it is that, INEC has what they call the RAC. I don't know what it's an acronym.
Resident Electoral Commissioner. Right?
No. That's the REC.
Oh,
They have
okay.
some like a cold store where they keep, materials closer
Oh,
to.
okay. Okay. Gotcha.
Yeah. So I mean, so the further away from, the center of Edo, Benin, where these things would normally come to, these things got, distributed pretty decently. Yeah. But then on election day proper, you found that even places that were about 13 minutes away from Benin didn't get the materials on time. So that then
Right.
put to how early elections did start in, quite a number of polling units. But I guess that
Right.
once that got sorted, things ran, smoothly until they didn't. So the real big snag with the election now is that, at the coalition centers, for about
Yeah.
4 local governments, the clowns in power decided to give us a show. So, in about 4 local governments, the report is that at coalition level, INEC didn't even follow its own guidelines. And then what that meant was that at the time when they all came to, is it what they call this thing, maybe coalition? I mean, at the time when they were said had to start to announce results, government magic already happened. So not be waiting people say them being collated. It's not even people. So this is civil society organizations says that there was a large variation in some of the results that were announced.
Yes.
So part of, so if you're talking about hot button issues now in the country, is that the ruling party has gone on a full frontal defense of its cock up, and then are now maligning the characters of people who work for certain civil society organizations, to the extent that they have gone personal with some of their apparatus. In fact, the guy who is like a publicity secretary was on TV yesterday, like clockwork, and I predicted that he would be, because they had already issued a statement. And he's known for a lot of sophistry. And so I'm speaking here about somebody called Aliko. So he's gone on. I mean, he's not very slow. He's actually very fast to make media around. That when you listen to him, you might be convinced because I mean, he has a very good command of the language, has the panache, the gravitas, But for somebody like me, for me, he always ends up talking beautiful nonsense. Partly because maybe sometimes the TV hosts don't really hold his feet to fire. So he started to talk about question the Yaga, this particular civil society. And what does Yaga do? I mean, Yaga Africa or Yaga Nigeria, however you want to go, for some years now have not created, so it wasn't their own creation, but they've deployed a statistical method towards testing the integrity of election. And this is quite apart from what you have as polling, pre-election polling, where some random startups, are beginning to try.
Yeah. So during the elections, they do like a parallel vote tabulation, right? So they count votes in particular local governments, and I guess it's a representative sample. It's
It
supposed to
is
be a representative
uh,
sample of
yeah. So it's not a random
of
sample.
polling units. Yeah. So it
Yeah.
means that they can declare within some statistical margin of error whether or not the results ultimately announced seem valid or
Yeah.
invalid. Obviously, they didn't like this election. They said it was there was a lot of, there is some discrepancy between their count and what was announced.
Significant,
Yeah. And I mean, I guess the other thing to note is that it appears that there is also some discrepancy. So here's where Luigi's point comes in. It appears there's also some discrepancy between what INEC announced and the count that you would get if you just went and crunched the numbers on IREV. As in, so IREV and the announced results also seem to have parted ways. Is that the sense you're also getting, Megan?
That's correct. I mean, that's factually correct what you just said. Factually correct. Where I disagree with OAG is that, I mean, I thought OAG was saying that, IRF failed in the way that it failed for the presidential election.
Right.
No, the results from the polling unit go to IRF.
Mm.
So that go on IRF, I mean, for those who have done the work, if you calculate, add up all of the votes, word by word, local government, what you get as a number is totally different from what INEC then decided to announce. So that's one part of that, just that civil society is making, some part of them. But I was speaking to the other one. But so
yes.
The point I'm trying to make is that depending on who you're listening to, the feelers are the same. That, according to different hosts of civil society, there was a big cock up by INEC at the coalition, at the coalition level.
Right. Yeah. So some magic happened at the collation centers. But I mean, to Oiji's point, that's not necessarily a radical departure from previous experience. I mean, yeah, of course, IREV was less bad this time than it was before. But I mean, I think we've known for some time now that where the real magic happens, the real wizardry, the most intriguing maths happens at the collation centers, right? So from that standpoint, this is a classic Nigerian election. I mean, there's a wider question, by the way, of like whether or not this all changes the ultimate outcome, like whether somebody else would have won without these maths and based on Yaga thing. And then there's, of course, the much bigger question of like, were there any options for Nigeria, let's say that person 2 or person 3 won. I mean, would that have mattered much? But within the constraints of the election, even by its own rules, I mean, it's clear that it was absurd.
Yeah, I think that, part of my own, maybe the word is apprehension, part of why this pisses me off, it's what it means for some election, and voters come out and apathy. Because the sense that, voters get that, votes don't count. You get me? And why would they come out and queue for long hours and then their votes won't count? Because at the end of the day, some coalition center, some apparatchiks of government. So essentially, what it portends is even far worse, because I mean, you're slowly and gradually moving towards the one-party state, which is I don't need to tell anybody what that means.
What I just kind of backing Emeka's point up is that if we get to a point where people don't even participate in the actions or the required activity, for democratic, functionality, then it becomes a hard task to even get people involved in politics, because they're just worried about the economics. And since the government and what they are doing doesn't matter, then let them just go and try to survive. And it's a bad place to be when it comes to democratic, involvement and people getting, being responsible for, their political actions and being involved. So it's a backward step.
Definitely.
It's a backward step, and it's not something that makes one happy in terms of, what we want. The change that we want or desire requires people being actively involved, like pushing alternative candidates, people with different worldviews, political, economic systems, all that. So if that's been eroded, then there's a lot, like the work is getting bigger. It's like a tough task, but we just can't stop, encouraging people to get active and all. And this again highlights the importance of like grassroots movements and maybe a point of maybe conquering from a grassroots level, building upwards because, yeah, it's tough. It's tough.
No, I buy that as well. I mean, I think that if there really is the sort of mass mobilization, mass democratic mobilization that we are desiring to see at the very local levels, at the neighborhood level,
Yeah.
Where these polling units are, then some of these things become harder to do, like you get your people to turn out en masse and surround these few clowns, then, there's just the atmosphere will be different. And it becomes a bit harder to announce nonsense. But, if they get their own few people out, and of course, some of that is subsidized, as in they're just buying there's some, even if they have a handful of people who are sycophants, then the rest, they just kind of purchase electoral consultants. But those are the only people who show up. Then, I mean, it becomes just a battle between two or three sets of like would-be riggers, and then the most hardcore out of all of them will take the cake, especially the ones who have federal support. So yeah, I mean, I think it's still, you're right, kind of illustrates the gap that it would be nice if some party was filling in actually pushing forth a serious grassroots mobilization around an alternative form of governance and democracy.
Yeah. I think that should be like the lowest hanging fruit at this point. Like, let's just capture a very small area and build from there. Show the people examples of what can be done because we have to appraise our reality on ground now. If both our parties there, people are not turning up, they are seeing that everything is the same. The longer it goes, it's becoming worse. People just want to survive and they don't care in the electoral process, they don't care in democratic process or political processes. So how do you get them, like get them to be involved? Is to bring it closer to them at this point. At this point, yeah. So that's it for me.
Well, I mean, before we cover some other ongoing issues, I mean, I want to take a step back and discuss the issue that we have, been discussing. It's been the center of discussion for the last couple of episodes, but I don't think we've all been together in the conversations because we had a series of interviews around bad governance and resistance to the status quo that took that form, right? Since it's the status quo we've just talked about. And, those conversations have been interviews. And of course, there was one with reflection episode with Emeka and I. But OG, we've not really heard your take so much on bad governance. So should we take a moment to consider bad governance before
Yeah, we
other stuff?
should.
Well, in terms of the interviews that we've done, the conversation we had with Megan, just your reading in general of how it went. What have you made so far of resistance in the form of bad governance? Was it more of the same in terms of the patterns of popular mobilization we've seen with NSAS, etc., or did other elements of it seem to stand out to you?
Yeah. First and foremost, that any or a bunch of people are even coming out to voice, and it's impressive and encouraging. Because I can imagine the kind of economic pressure and what people are facing and feeling. At that point. So for them to come out is encouraging. It's saluted. We salute it. But we should then move forward into something bigger, something better, and more political gearings towards it. That's political in its own way, but like the state will keep on showing you that look, they will crack down, they will arrest people, especially in the northern aspect of the country now, because we're seeing much more northern participation in these protests and all, So that people are coming out is very important. It's still very important, regardless of what it is. People that should come out because it's little things. When people are pushed to the wall, it's little things that can, cascade into bigger actions. Because trust me, there's hunger and anger in the land. And nobody knows when that time will be. Nobody knows when all this will, coalesce into a whirlwind that will, sweep into something that's gonna be of like that'll be a landmark action, or that at least shake the country to its core. So there should always be that possibility and permanence of that knowledge that people will turn up and turn out. So it should be always there. That possibility should be there, because when people are scared of coming out and voicing, then it means we've lost one more layer of popular resistance. So that public space should not be let go. I salute the people that organize and mobilize people to coming out. I'm not against it at all. Yeah, of course we can do more, but if this is all we have at the moment, let's keep coming out. Somehow, some way, things have a way of playing towards something that will be bigger and better. So it's just around organization, it's just around people coming out, but that we will abandon that space. It should not be something to consider at all. We should always come out. There's one going on, that will go on October. People that can should come out and let the ruling class know that they can't just sit there pretty and that nothing is happening. So at least if you're being punched in the face, try to punch back somehow, some way. So yeah, people should come out if they can. That's it at this point. And if you look at our episodes and what we've been talking about, we've mentioned that it's going to get to a head at a point. Look at the fuel price, petrol price, cost of living. Like, come on, people are dying literally. And you're saying, they shouldn't come out, DSS here, police there, NSCDC are harassing and arresting people up and down. Gets to a point.
Even civil defense.
Yeah,
They don't increase fuel price since after the bad governance.
Yeah. So all we are seeing is just a state that doesn't care for the people. They are doubling down, hammering on the impoverishment of people. They are doing it without any form of, fear. And it's the contradictions of their own mismanagement that they are trying to kick against with power.
They're not afraid now.
Yeah, so.
Sit down for AC room, they tell you about CRR rates.
No kind of subsidy has gone, type of, people are dying out there, man. So people can and should come up.
Physical needs to catch up with the money free.
It's just an insult to the people.
Yeah, no doubt about it. I mean, so yeah, what OG is pro coming out on October 1st.
Yeah,
I'm leaning in that direction.
Yeah.
Emeka, will you go out on October 1st? Will you go and yes, will you go and market your wares there at the protest?
It's a market wares. What do you make of you?
Emeka sells analytical prowess.
Oh, okay.
Amongst other ways.
If the numbers are swelling, why? We'll swell the rank.
Okay.
It's not a big deal. I mean, yeah. But
you will be the first. You will be the first.
You know me. Anybody who won't come out, may they come out.
I ain't no matter.
Yeah.
Anybody who won't come out, may they come out. Like there's levels to all these things. It's details that we're hearing and the needless loss of lives. Like I see videos online and they mess my day up. There was a lady talking about how she finished school. Of course, nobody like say all these things never done, they happen before. But now stories where we say we hear when we they grow up, we see people around us. We don't they grow up into being, adults and young adults, old adults, whatever.
Being adults.
No, may we put them like that, like say, okay, maybe I'm talking because of my situation that I was born, all that shit. But like, come on, what thing they do to people? This thing that just makes sense. Like, makes sense. And sooner or later, this shit is going to hit the fan. It must hit the fan where these guys will know that they can't continue with this kind of insult to human beings. Like, this is just basic insults to human beings at this point. And, and however people choose to address it, be it peaceful or otherwise, is left to them. That's my own. Yeah, it's left to them.
Right.
Yeah.
No, I mean,
Left to them.
it's definitely hitting the fan for sure. And I guess we'll see about October. In the lead up to that, we've been hearing that some comrades, friends of ours, like leaders of movement spaces, are being invited by the police for conversations.
Yeah, invite now. If you like, I don't go party. You invite me come party, I don't go.
Suddenly, police want to host conversations. Say what? This podcast space is increasingly becoming choked.
That's a bit
Anyway,
cheeky, if you ask me, to be honest, right? So, what the police won't follow them for?
yeah,
What you won't really follow them for? They've made their demand, and it's not the police that should be inviting them to even start
yeah,
with. It's the states that, I mean, well, the police is part of the state, but it's the federal government, that or actors or officials within federal government. So if you talk to SDF, Secretary of State, government of the federation, they invite them,
yeah,
and we'll
yeah,
go here, or maybe even chief of staff, we'll go here. Say then maybe you want to communicate. If police come and then they reiterate what their demand, waiting police want.
No, they go arrest them for there now.
Police wants to rub minds with them.
Rubbing minds with this will be that program.
Like the change that they ask,
Yeah.
right? If
hunger has become a policy issue, Megan. That's what they're trying to tell us.
I mean, I don't get it.
I think it's just soft intimidation, honestly.
Definitely.
So it goes back to how we started for me, right? These guys have, I think they think they understand the point.
Yeah.
In the next 4 years, they'll call an election. Then they will mobilize 1 million votes, or 500 or 300,000 votes, knowing that there's voter apathy, so you won't get up to more than 30%, of the voting public come out as their vote.
Yeah.
And once you can that, they can manipulate one thing or another thing, and then somehow skew the votes in their favor. But part of where how you would expect that Nigerians would want to shock them is if we come out and mark to vote. I mean, not to reiterate some of the things that you have said, but these guys are buying votes, which is suggestive of the fact that votes are pretty count. In fact, they're buying votes like sometimes up to 15,000-20,000 naira. So yeah. So, but if and then you have to buy, say, okay, at state level, let's use the Edo state. The guys who say they won had 290,000. Now, let me be clear about it. That's 290,000 votes. He get clean votes with there. He get very clean votes with there. Maybe even 190,000. Maybe more. So the votes that they actually had to buy, let's even put it at 100,000.
Yeah.
So you can, if you do the math, you see that they're spending maybe 1 billion. But the more numbers come out and the more that they have to buy, Baba, because if you're taking this thing out of state treasury, it's not anybody's personal money.
Yeah, exactly. If you compare that to the monthly allocations, okay, it's something, but it's not. It's like less than a month way less than a month's allocation, right?
You get it, which they will get back. So you can imagine that you had at least 10 APC governors in Edo State, which is suggestive that they didn't have anything to do in their own state. In fact, some of them had started to camp in Edo State from Thursday. The same thing for the PDP poll, you understand? So they don't have anything to do. In fact, this is the most important thing to do, because I have taken maybe 500 million from the state coffers and I have given it to the contestant to go and share in one local government. So let me even come and monitor my investment. So when you come back to the protest, they always look at it as like, but we had maybe 200,000 clean votes. So how many people can be, aggrieved by our policies. The rest don't care. And even if they did, they wouldn't be so invested. They didn't vote, so they wouldn't be so invested in what's going on to come out and protest, because it's the same thing for vote. Same things for votes is the same thing for protest. If you have the numbers on voting day, or you have the numbers protesting, how many police then get?
That's the point. Absolutely, that's the point. Is that mass mobilization was still really missing. I mean, and I think, like these protests, not only do they register disagreement or suggest that not everybody is on the same page, not everybody is patiently waiting for the fruits of the reforms, as the spokespeople for the regime put it, but they also help expand our own mobilizational capacity between elections, which, by the way, is something that the ruling parties do manage to do, is to kind of consolidate or build constituencies so that they can reduce the cost of buying votes, as Emeka said, so that there are at least some people who are already within the dragnet. They can.
Those LCDA, go LCDA, more those places, man, shit.
Choked with the APC in a place like Lagos, right?
Yeah.
Choked. So, and those guys, they're looking for something more than 15,000. Their votes are bought with IOUs of more substantial quality. Or, they believe in stuff, of course, the ethnic mythos or whatever, the technocratic mythos. So yeah, I mean, I think these protests certainly are presenting an opportunity to expand the mobilizational capacity, but I think we're still so far falling short, right, of the height of what can be achieved there, I feel.
Yeah. It's an opportunity anyway to key into, and when the time is right, people will key into it.
So yeah, what else has been up? What's on the radar beyond these issues? I mean, I know there's some stuff, Dangote included, that we want to dedicate more specific time to discussing.
Now that you mentioned, we can skim it off the top and then do a deep dive much later. I mean, I found it fascinating that if I was going to take a stab at it.
Yeah, please.
I found it fascinating. I mean, amongst other things that has led up this last bit, I found it fascinating that we went to New York. Tell some lady who, I think this is probably the second or third interview that he granted this
Bloomberg, right?
Yeah, that we should that this is the time to
remove substitute.
I mean, I found it really something he didn't quite grow the balls to say back here in Nigeria. So it goes to hunger on the margins. And so I'm saying, Dangote, to me, I dare you to go on BBC Hausa and go and say what you just said. That could tell them for your language. Say it's time to remove because you use binary. Yeah. So I mean, those guys, and it's I think it's important to note that in all the back and forth between him and agents, the NNPC, and then PDRA, Dangote has never thought twice to tell us how much he sells or he's going to sell fuel per liter, or even per ton. So that some of us can do the maths ourselves. But on this interview, he finds that he's comfortable enough to tell this white lady that he sells. Okay, so NNPC, after all of the back and forth, because I mean, I think they're testing their popularity.
Both sides, right?
Yeah, with their social capital, and people are already tired of Dangote.
Yeah,
because everybody, you can't fool people for. I mean, how did Bob Marley say it? Fool some people.
Some people, some of the time.
But you can't fool all the time, right? Nobody, soak anybody brain for water. So people, a thing. So they're asking, so all this thing you're saying, how much now? NNPC don't say they sell, then they leave from you for $8.98. You say na lie. Say in fact they sell to them in dollars. So they say, okay, hold on. Then can't go carry paper. That thing where then they avoid. That we don't in Africa it's like they explain for us some pen. They like write things down. So they go write everything out. Everything can come out to 950. So then when they talk 8.99, you say na lie. They can't give you the dollar rate so then use change up. And they brought everything down for us. 950. Only for you to go to New York, within the margins of hunger, you grant an interview and then you're telling the lady that you're selling it at a 15 to 20% discount compared to how much NNPC is using to import steel. Okay. I mean, I'd like to leave it there so that, is this pandering to the West, thing that he does?
Right. And well, I think he probably also recognizes that one of the ways to put pressure on the government to dance to his tune, even more than they're already dancing to his tune, is to say things in London and New York.
Yeah, to secure that place.
Yeah, right. And that will be carried by the foreign press, which is where these guys feel that they derive their legitimacy, right? If success to the regime is all about
foreign investor, how you're viewed abroad and all that shit.
You get a foreign investor.
Exactly. How you're perceived by the investor class, then granting an interview precisely to Bloomberg or Financial Times or whatever is a good way to put pressure on them. So from that standpoint, he knows what he's doing. Especially since, as you mentioned, Emeka, some of the public, the PR, the public, let's say, social capital that he's tried to build in the last few weeks is starting to wane a bit, and people are starting to say, "Come, is this guy actually serious?" So I think he's changing tack to some extent, or at least doubling up. This is kind of the more you see, the less you understand scenario. From the beginning of the fact that we remain a country that imports refined petroleum while exporting crude, and despite having several refineries, now the privately owned one that claims to be the largest in Africa, or whatever, we still are importing refined, and in fact, the refined petroleum imported still appears to be cheaper than the one produced locally by this private refinery. So from that standpoint, I suppose you can see why he's saying, "Oh, let them basically remove subsidy," which means subsidize him instead of the foreign, the imported petroleum that they claim to be subsidizing. So, that's as much as I can make sense of what's happening. Of course, we'll have an opportunity, like we mentioned, to dig into this a bit further, but it's just clear that there's lies, and more economics.
Telling lies with statistics.
And again, it shows that, like we always say, if you have a government that's not an embodiment of the will of the people, this is what you keep on getting. Because for us not to still know what's the true cost of a liter of petrol in the country, government itself, they do Dangote, they do their own, NNPC, they do their own. Everybody, the government is really at war with the people. And I think that is what people should hold on to. Look, they don't give a fuck about your tribe or anywhere you come from. It's that you have a conglomeration of people that are going to sabotage your life and existence. And how are you going to parley with every other person that's working for a better future to see that this is overturned? That's it. These guys are just playing. They've been playing games with the cement. They've been playing games with any other resource that we have. Now is the time for crude oil now, and they're still dragging the people under the bus. It's just disgusting.
Yeah. But anyway, Dangote said that he can no longer afford to buy Arsenal. So at least that probably put a smile on America's face.
He should not even go. That he should.
But it's good that he can't even afford to buy Arsenal. Because that life.
America, you know what? You don't want post-colonial elite to.
Did you hear Aladi? Did you hear him?
They say 4 billion or something.
No, that would be all those ones they pay me. Say he regrets that I mean, he would have bought it at 2 billion, but now that he's not that liquid, yeah, and Arsenal, and that at the time he wanted to buy, he likes to buy things for cheap.
But that's
Model be that now.
literally
No model,
that's
like I'm just
business.
model.
That's
That is
business.
business
I mean,
model where
and
you do.
of course, that's what we taught him because we privatized
No, that's what I was going to say
and
now.
Everything for cheap.
sold it at dirt cheap
Mm.
prices to
No,
this
that's
clown.
the
So
business. Yeah,
yeah,
so I mean, you can hear his reasoning. That would
yeah,
fly over the heads of many people, but that's how he thinks. You know,
yeah,
it's what more now because Arsenal is doing better. You know, and
yeah,
then of course, given the fact that he's just come out from spending 20 billion on a refinery, he can't quite afford to do it now. But you know, the truth of the matter is that he then goes on to say, and this is what many people miss, is that it doesn't make sense. The valuation of Arsenal at 4 billion doesn't make sense now anymore for him, since all he wanted to be was as a promotional,
yeah,
something to use to promote his business.
yeah,
So
yeah.
I then
So,
stumbled, today on some guys on social media. I think it's the local league, whichever bodies or fans of the local league who are now saying, come and buy one club in local. Which rich when a local league get? Some of our clubs don't even go play CAF, so when I don't even get levels for Africa. So
They'll come brand them Dangote.
they'll
Make
come brand them
say make
Dangote.
say
Make
make Dangote buy Nigerian club. Huh? Do it with them.
Like in club, they play ball.
Unless the players want to be working part time at the refinery to be
Or they
working,
carry cement inside truck.
they go to load cement for truck. They want to be loading cement.
Yeah.
I think there's a kind of theoretical question to raise here. Maybe this is part of where we end. Is like the African elites, including the business class and the upper echelons of the elected classes, which of course they're somehow the same. I mean, the more you think about it, they're, the more the beneficiaries of privatization and such, they're both the dominant parts, the dominant forces in the electoral arena and in the market. But, I guess, I sometimes wonder how to characterize that elite because some people say that they're degenerates, they are lazy, and they are foolish. And I mean, I'm sympathetic to the sentiment that those kinds of analysts are feeling. I get where they're coming from. But at the same time, you could also argue that those elites have, in alliance with their Western partners, don't get me wrong, they've created the perfect conditions for accumulation without any kind of representation or responsibility. So in a sense, they are, institutionally speaking, some of the most privileged elites
Successful, yeah.
in the world and some of the most successful elite in the world. If you see it as a class project that they've been pursuing since independence, if not before, if you trace the origin of the wealth of somebody like Dangote, it might even be pre-independence. So
It is pre-independence.
how do you guys feel about, right, it is, right, with Dangote,
Yeah,
the family wealth and all of that. So, I mean, how do you guys feel about that question? Since we won't go into the details of the refinery, Tinubu, Malta, mixing, etc.,
Do you want
Wale,
honest?
discussion today. Yeah, where do you stand on that? Are these wise degenerates, smart fools? I mean, how do we really understand how seemingly idiotic and lazy elite has managed to create the perfect institutional conditions for non-stop accumulation, and they still get applauded, in the Western capitals or wherever where they go, despite all of this? How do you make sense of that?
Baba, or except OJ, you looking to go first?
No,
hello.
fire on, make
Oh,
it.
So, for me, it's, I'll be brutally honest with you. Nobody say I really understand the English way you speak in asking that question. But since you just called Dangote and you talk, maybe where this world came from. I think Dangote's great grandfather, I think it was, I'm not sure whether it was grandfather or great grandfather, but the Dan Tata's father, or maybe grandfather, I don't know how far back, but I'm looking at. So I'm talking about between the 1920s and the 1940s. It was already, um, especially in the 1940s. So maybe he started to trade in the 1920s, but by the 1940s was already
A major player.
one of the richest, if not the richest man in Nigeria, or one of the richest men in Nigeria. You know, so this goes back to the marketing board.
Yeah.
Conversations that we've had. Without giving this kinds of example. This is the history of the money.
Yeah.
Um,
The middlemen
so
who became
yeah, so
government contractors. So,
yeah, so it's not be today then start to depend on the state for the wealth, without having to do much, just as being middlemen, us or and it's always been about commodities. Okay, so that's very important, So I think that for those who might want to go into that research, migration and all of that. So the Dan Tatars moved from one place to another, and by the time you move wealth, transfer of wealth generationally, I think that they lost some of that wealth, so it wasn't that it's not like they grew it,
right.
steadily. So I think that at some point there was a space where some of that money got missing, or the value of it, then dropped. But if you then fast forward to the 70s, you find out that Dangote's uncle, who set him up, as folklore has it, was a commissioner in Kano State,
Yeah.
and what all I think he had at the time was a bit of wealth, not in astronomical terms,
Yeah.
the way that it is today. I mean, to give an example, in a way that he will go to Bronu and give 1.5 billion without shaking.
Yeah.
So, but then the name already existed. So somewhere down the line, he was able to scam both the Kano state government and I think it was Castina state government.
Yeah. 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 And I mean, of course, Kano State government at that time was what would it included current day Jigawa and Katsina, so it's
Yeah,
like a much bigger
yeah.
state at the point in time.
And I'm speaking of scam these people for millions of dollars. And so when we say millions of dollars, in today's money, we're talking about billions of baby dollars.
And I mean, by the way, we have to come back to this in the Dangote episode. I mean, not to cut you short, right? But I think the episode where we talk about the long history of the state and business with this refinery being in the center, I think it would be good to go that far.
That's the foundation, yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So but yes, you've dismissed my question as a bunch of English, but I still want to bring it back to the
No, I
center
did not
of
dismiss. So I just quote me correctly. Don't I can sue for
Oh, yeah.
defamation.
So
I
Aliko can't represent
say
you in this shabby case. Yeah. No, but
but
the
yeah,
point,
but
the question I'm raising still, I feel, I still am curious as to like, I know you were getting there, but I want to leave the element that you first started with as a teaser for that next episode and
okay.
bring it back to the front end, which where you were trying to land in terms of understanding the post-colonial elite here, state and market. I mean, is Dangote an idiot or is he actually kind of a genius? I mean, that's kind of what I want to understand because even when you were talking about his Bloomberg interview, you were saying that like it's embarrassing that he's going there to say no, I couldn't buy it for cheap and sell it slightly more expensive, which is my business model, so it's no longer worth my time. But isn't that kind of like it's that over generations they've managed to create the institutional conditions where they can do that and amass dramatic amounts of wealth, and where you can create a refinery that the state subsidizes
Yeah.
at all levels,
Mm.
and you're still asking for more concessions constantly from the state and mobilizing popular
I mean,
sentiment. So what do you think of that? I mean, is it laziness? I mean,
it's not laziness. It's not. It's the quintessential model of the neocolonial elites. They are parasites on the state, and of course, like Emeka has rightly said, they are parasites on commodities, raw materials, and labor. these are the foundational, things that they stand on top of, using the state to profiteer on top. And then because they don't do anything, like the money you're having is not correspondent to the mode of production. So that's showing that you're not adding any value. You're just a middleman that is facilitating outwards, transfer of capital somehow, some way. You've been doing that historically, and then you're making your money, and we're not seeing anything in the lives of the people. You're not generating more jobs. You're just doing the barest minimum. And at all angles.
Yeah, they're beneficiaries of a system. I agree.
Yeah. And at all angles, you are parasitizing on the state immensely. You can't stand on your 2 feet. You're not innovating anything. Like Fanon characterizes these guys as just parasites. They're just middlemen, business guys.
His innovation is that they're now producing
clear PMS.
Water
PMS. Quality PMS.
drinkable PMS.
And that's what's wowed the cross section, a very large, significant, in fact, if not the entire Nigerian middle class.
That's a failure of a class.
Oh no, their argument is actually that he's not that. In fact, you can excuse Dangote all his atrocities. So these guys are not naive. It's not like they don't know that Dangote is a thief. Okay, let me rephrase that. They don't know that Dangote is fleecing the system. You understand? But their argument is that, Dangote is better than every other person who is fleecing the system because he's investing in Nigeria. That the rest are taking their money out of Nigeria. So
and at some point, what he does, they'll be able to afford it.
The fact is that the argument is that Dangote has skin in the Nigerian game, so he's industrializing.
Yeah, indeed.
So that's the what's it called? That's where they are, and for some reason they think they're justified. That every other alternative opinion is actually stupid. I think that's what gets to me. The fact that you cannot criticize Dangote. In fact, if you criticize Dangote, it is personal. It is bad belly. And my own extreme reaction is to tell you blatantly that I can see where you're coming from. You're coming from the point of view that if Dangote succeeds, he's somewhat like a role model to you. So if he succeeds, chances are is that you can succeed. But the truth of the matter is that you cannot be the kind of billionaire that Dangote is.
Yeah, you missed the first wave of privatization.
You missed that wave. You missed many waves of it.
If you want to,
and I know they curse you. It's not because I'm not. It's not. I know they swear for you. It's just facts.
No, absolutely.
One of the pathologies. Let me just add a little bit of it. One of the pathologies of this kind of system is that the middle class is like they have that aspirational similarity to these guys that we're talking about. So they see themselves like it's a mirror of seeing yourself in these guys, and for some reason you just have this knee-jerk response of defending them, whatever it is that they do, because it's just like a mirror of you and what you would have done in this kind of system that we found ourselves.
Yeah, and it's the people who put it in a complex way will call it neoliberal subjectivity, right? It's not just the policy; it's also the mentality that people adopt.
Comes from
I
this
think,
material
you said it well that you learn lessons, right, from the people who are benefiting in the system, and you're like, that could be me.
That could be me, man. If it be me, if it be you,
yeah. Anyway, let's see how many refineries we'll get out of the "if it be me" mentality. My sense is probably not very many.
Yeah.
How can you get any refinery again when one man is the argument for most middle class Nigerians is that we should hand over Nigeria to one man for cheap.
Yep. Yep. It's worked well so far, right? So
as if we've not given him cement, sugar, and all the other things.
Yeah. It's like when people say, let's give the reforms time to set in. It's kind of like, yeah, but the reforms have had 30, 45 years to set in. And it's even the fact that they've
setting out safe.
Yeah, it's how well they've set in that has led to all this chaos. So how much more time do they need? Anyway, I suppose we should probably bring it to a close now, having cut across a few burning current affairs issue and even alluded to the next round of conversations. Are there any final thoughts, final messages or pitches or things to sell?
Yeah, people should just keep an eye out for the state being more fascistic. The more the situations get worse, the more they are going to be very, very, like, they're going to clamp down on, any form of resistance. So people should watch out for that and, just leverage on your fellow Nigerians, leverage on people. All this division, this tribal sentiment, it makes me sick to the stomach. This rubbish should stop. Like, we get online, we can't even have a safe environment anymore. We are talking about tribal shit when people's lives are just going down the drain. Let's look at these core issues that we're talking about. And, in all of this, we've not even mentioned anything about tribe or anything like that. We're giving you the material analysis of things. So just look at it from that standpoint. And you see that there's a logic behind all these things. They are there to fleece and steal from you. You are there with your fellow Hausa, Igbo, Yoruba, whatever. And we're all on the ground, just, trying to make ends meet. Let's just, piece things up and move in a direction that is for progressive action. That's my own word.
Yeah, word, Megan. Your thoughts?
For me, I think that if I was going to address any demographic, Nigerian demography today, that I'd be speaking to the Gen Zs, and I'd be saying that the earlier they get involved in politics, the better. The earlier they awaken their own consciousness, the better. And I say that because you and I would fall into part of this generation that I'm about to speak to. There has been at least two generations who didn't quite get involved in politics early. The excuse would be that there were the generations who grew up right in the thick of military rule and that there wasn't much politics that was going on. But that wouldn't be the same for the Gen Zs. So my take is, if you don't do it today, you will have El Rufai's grandchildren doing the same things that we're complaining about.
Yeah.
We'll have about the same things. I mean, that were, or you'd have Dangote's grandchildren, command, you know, at the commanding heights of society, and then you can feel that you're better than them all you want, which is the same way that some of us feel today. But the idea is that now person we get power, now they run things. So I'd leave it. I'll leave it there. I guess. Yeah.
Excellent. Yeah, I would just say that it would be nice to hear your say, dear listener. I mean, we've aired out our views. We'll continue to do so, and we occasionally get some pretty intriguing comments, often some pretty good comments. But yeah, I mean, we encourage more comments and suggestions and criticism. What do you think of the discussion we've had so far? Intrigued by your take. And my own call to action would be, let's end the costly subsidy on monopolies and on beneficiaries of privatization. We've subsidized them enough. Subsidies are disastrous, as we all know. So let's leave it there.